why would you ever raise money? What would you spend the money on? We're going to get to that same place with software, where software becomes so cheap and so easy to build that it's basically free. And the question is, okay, what else are you going to be spending your money on? Or why do you even need to raise money? If all you want to do is go test out this dApp, this smart contract, this website.
I welcome Haseeb Qureshi, technology-focused crypto investor, software engineer, and managing partner at Dragonfly, a leading global venture capital firm specializing in the cryptocurrency and blockchain sectors.
There's going to be 100 times more founders, 100 times more people creating products, creating software experiences because of how cheap and how easy it's going to be. And that's going to be a huge accelerant to what's happening in the on-chain economy.
Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast show, once again powered by businessabc.net, citiesabc.com, and wisdomia.ai. We keep profiling personalities that change the world of business, finance, technology, between blockchain, crypto, AI. And today I'm quite excited to bring to the series one personality that has been leading the investment world when it comes to blockchain and crypto. I welcome Haseeb Qureshi, the long technology-focused crypto investor, software engineer, and managing partner at Dragonfly, a leading global venture capital firm specializing in the cryptocurrency and blockchain sectors. Dragonfly Capital focus on a global approach using a cross-border network of support innovative crypto projects. Previously, Haseeb was the general partner at MetaStable, acquired by Dragonfly, where he led early investments into Avalanche, Near Protocol, Algorand, and Starkware. Before that, Haseeb founded a stablecoin startup, was a blockchain engineer at Earn.com, acquired by Coinbase, and an anti-fraud engineer at Airbnb. Haseeb was also a prolific and professional poker player who grew his bankroll from $50 to over $250,000 by the age of 17. And at the age of 19, he was ranked among the top 10 online heads-up poker players in the world and earned over $1 million a year. He co-founded as well in the past SFCF, a poker firm, and worked as a business manager of professional poker players negotiating significant contracts. As well as a writer and author, Haseeb wrote a bestseller book entitled How to Be a Poker Player, The Philosophy of Poker, which ranked at the one best-selling poker book on Amazon for 5 months. Haseeb Qureshi, so you have a fantastic profile that touches, I would say, education, cryptocurrencies, investment, blockchain, and a lot of technology capacities. Mm-hmm. So I would like to start always by the beginning. A bit of your background, especially how did you start? I would like to touch one moment in your life that made who you are right now. It might be a person, might be an education element, or family member, or something else.
So I think for anybody I know, there's always multiple things that made them into who they are. If you look at my background, I used to be a professional poker player. Eventually I became a software engineer, I became a founder, and then eventually found my way into the investing world. Probably the most pivotal moment for me in my career, at least, was on the tail end of me being a founder. I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with this company. We had an acquisition offer from a large crypto exchange at that time. And that was when I first ended up meeting Naval Ravikant, who was a very well-known angel investor in Silicon Valley, very early in the crypto scene. And I was asking him for advice on this M&A transaction. And he was the one who originally proposed to me that I should become an investor. And I didn't know anything at all about investing. And it was kind of out of the blue that he was like, hey, instead of getting acquired by this company, you should instead come on the investing side. And I remember I told him, it's like, look, I don't know anything at all about investing. I don't even invest my own money. I just put my money in the stock market, like the indexes. So I considered myself at that time to really be economically very simple. And I said, look, how is somebody like me who's never studied finance, I don't know anything at all about the startup investing world, how am I going to be a VC? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And he told me, like, look, the thing about investing is that you can learn very easily all of the mechanics of investing. Right? You can learn how to read a term sheet. You can learn what the important different terms are. You can learn how to do valuation. All that stuff is not that hard. If you're smart, you can figure it out. The thing that I can't teach you is I can't teach you judgment. If you don't have judgment, no amount of learning how to read term sheets and no amount of learning how to do valuation is going to be able to make you into a good investor. And so if you have good judgment, the rest of it can come. You're smart enough. You can figure the rest of it out. But the main thing that separates good and bad investors in the long run is your ability to look somebody in the eye and really understand, is this the person who's going to build this thing? And so, he told me, at that time it was still very early in the development of crypto. And I remember the thing that really stuck with me, which was that, look, you could go forward, build this company, get acquired, and go do this thing within this larger organization, or you could become an investor. And if you decide that you're going to go down this route of being, having your own company, the entirety of the crypto industry is like this gigantic tidal wave that everybody knows, or at least everybody believes at that time, is going to come to shore. And if you are a founder and you decide to go ahead and build this company, you are one grain of sand fighting in that tidal wave to make it to shore. And not every grain of sand makes it. But if you're an investor, you get to pull up a chair on the beach and watch the wave come in and decide which of these little waves that you see is going to end up becoming the big wave. And in a way, if what you're really fascinated by is seeing what this technology is going to do to the world, being an investor is the best seat in the house to watch how this industry plays out. And that was what ended up convincing me to shelve my startup and come on the investing side. And that was 2017. So it's been quite a while now that I've been an investor. But it wasn't for that, I probably would never have considered myself the kind of person who become a venture capitalist.
Well, that's a great story. But having Naval as a mentor is not a bad thing.
Yeah, it was a very, very incredible seat for me to be able to learn the practice of investing.
Oh, it's a great school. So how did you go into crypto?
So so as I mentioned, I used to be a professional poker player. And I quit poker in 2011. And at that time, that was a few years after the Bitcoin white paper. And I first heard about Bitcoin from some friends of mine who were ex-poker players, who, when it became very difficult to play poker online after 2011, many of those people started using Bitcoin as a way to settle their gambling debts. So they would play these online games for play money, but they would settle offline or asynchronously using Bitcoin. And so I first thought of Bitcoin as like, oh, Bitcoin is like Skrill. Bitcoin is like this, it's like this, or like NetTeller or something. It's one of these ways to pay people online, but it's not, I don't really see what it is besides that unless you're, kind of shady. So it's like a shadier version of NetTeller. And so it was several years later that, I came into software engineering and computer science. And then I started learning about what a blockchain is and started learning about the sort of the data structures and the algorithms that undergird an actual blockchain. I thought, okay, this is very interesting. It feels like there's something more there than I originally saw. But I still didn't really see it because, again, as I mentioned, I wasn't very macroeconomically sophisticated. So the idea of like, oh, Bitcoin is non-sovereign currency, this can replace a dollar. I was like, I don't know what any of that means. Like, to me, it's just how you pay people online if you want to buy drugs. And it was really with the advent of Ethereum that it suddenly clicked for me that what was happening in the space was much bigger than I originally thought. And so I was working at Airbnb at that time, and I was working on payments fraud as a software engineer. And when you work on payments at Airbnb, Airbnb is it's an international company. They pay people in 50, 60 countries around the world. And when you're paying people internationally, your experience as a user is that you swipe your credit card and magically somebody on the other side of the world gets paid. And of course, there's no magical system that pays people all around the world. There's no single global payment system. There are many different disparate payment systems that operate in different countries at different times, with different holidays, with different APIs, and they're all just a big, when you're actually working on the system, you realize that it's just a gigantic pile of spaghetti. There's no common interface. Some things work on some days, not others. There's CSVs being mailed around at midnight. It's all a gigantic mess. And as an engineer, when you see a system like this, your intuition is, oh my God, we should throw this away and we should start over with a system that is built for the world that we actually live in. And the world that we live in is today, it's digital first, it's 24/7, it's globally interoperable, right? Like that is the world that Airbnb actually operates in. But the payment systems were all built in like the 60s and 70s for a very different set of constraints than the one that we're in today. And that's when it clicked for me, is that, oh, that's what crypto is. Crypto is a bunch of people who realize that, hey, the way all this stuff works is totally broken. It's not made for the world that we're in today. So what if we were to redesign everything from the ground up? Maybe you would make everything peer-to-peer. Maybe you'd make everything use cryptography. Maybe you'd make everything algorithmic in the monetary policy and the way that all these things happen in a fair and neutral and publicly observable way. And that was when I realized, like, oh, the stuff that's in this industry is going to change the trajectory of money. And that's what made me get into the space full time.
No, it's a fantastic. First of all, I like a roadmap what has been happening in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But I want to come back because what is interesting about you is you start as a world professional poker, and from 50 you went to $250,000, and then you went to software engineer. You ended up actually working in Airbnb.
Yeah.
And then you ended up actually leading one of the biggest VC firms in crypto and blockchain. So from these different parts, I want to, because one of the things in crypto, especially people that trade, there's a component of gambling.
Right.
I try always not to go too much on it, but I think it's something you cannot ignore.
Of course, yeah.
So, and as well, like you said, most of the peer-to-peer systems have to be gamified. So from your background on gambling, or well, poker is more than just that, but from that background, from software engineer to this level, how do you make these analogies? Because there's a lot of analogies, because in the end of the day, one of the challenges, like you said, in the present systems of technology and payments and finance is still that they're not reflecting. So that's for 4.5 million people playing games every day, billion, not million. And most of our systems are very broader, gray, and full of issues. And then at the same time, we have all the parallel internet, like you mentioned. Right. There's gambling, there's the dark web, there's a lot of things. So we are in an interstice where we have like two worlds working in parallel. Yeah. And you've been on this for the last 10 years, both in Silicon Valley, building companies. And as well, crypto still didn't manage to go mainstream in the way we all would like to. So I would like to hear how you see this kind of historical part before you go to your achievements.
Yeah. It's definitely true that you look at almost any technology, the initial adoption of the technology starts with some kind of subversive use case, right? So the early days of the internet, you saw that a lot of what was happening on the early internet was, pornography, stealing IP, kind of piracy, as we call it more in modern times. So this is actually a very common trajectory for technology, is that it's going to start with the people who need it the most, who are the earliest adopters. And the people who need it the most are the people who have no access to any kind of dollar banking or dollar rails. And increasingly what you see, so I think actually Chainalysis puts out the very best data on this. Chainalysis is the largest kind of forensics company in blockchain, is that with each passing year, the proportion of Bitcoin activity that is black market goes down exponentially. And you can see, I think by 2024, it's like less than 1% of the total activity in Bitcoin is attributable to black market activity. Now, a big part of this is just that the amount of good activity has been ballooning like crazy, right? I mean, all the ETFs and all the money that's flowing around that's obviously clearly in the lit financial ecosystem has increased so dramatically. And the fact that Bitcoin, the reality is that now law enforcement and regulators are just much more capable of being able to do blockchain forensics. Because unless you're using a Monero or a Zcash or something like that, the reality is that if you do something on a blockchain, it lives forever. It can be traced back for as long as you want. Whereas if you are using the regular banking system and you move your dollars into a Mongolian bank, then okay, that's over. That's GG for the regulators who are trying to come after you and figure out where did that money go. So it's a complicated picture, and it's one that evolves over time. It was true that in 2012, 2013, if you were using Bitcoin, law enforcement had no idea what was going on, and it was kind of game over for them. That's not true today. And that's one of the reasons why you see increasingly is that many of the worst financial actors are choosing not to use Bitcoin, not to use Ethereum, because of the fact that they're so traceable and that paper trail exists basically on chain forever. So I think the story about how much of this is black market versus in the normal lit economy, it evolves alongside the technology. As the technology, and it's also true of things like stablecoins. More and more of the financial activity on chain is happening on stablecoins, and stablecoins by their nature are freezable. If you're using USDC or using Tether, just like that, they can stop you and say, hey, law enforcement gave us a ring. You're clearly a bad dude. We're going to requisition your money. And it's happened multiple times this year at very large hacks that were basically frozen using Tether or USDC's abilities to freeze directly on chain. So it's a complicated picture, but it's one that I think over time what you're going to see is that probably what will happen in crypto is a bifurcation. Is that there will be parts of the on-chain economy that are dark, that are things like Tornado Cash or things like Zcash and Monero that really specialize in more black market use cases, where less and less of the normal people are going to find their way into such technologies. But the vast majority of what's happening on chain is going to be in the lit economy, where it's going to be people who more or less are unafraid of any kind of law enforcement or any kind of backlash.
No, and this is I was actually speaking in a conference actually this week, and one of the things, there was a director of MasterCard saying that the crypto economy is going to be around $11 trillion. So this is MasterCard, so it's a number.
Right.
So, but coming back to your background, because what is amazing is that you've been in investments and big Silicon Valley players, and you have as well an education background. So prior to Dragonfly, you led early investments in major projects like Avalanche, Near Protocol, and Algorand, which are probably the most important still in the blockchain world. So I would like to see from, now we went macro, now micro again, and from your story of starting as an investor, then starting by investing in some of the protocols of blockchain.
Yeah.
And as well, this became some of the biggest ones. And Avalanche is a major top 10, 15 coin currency in the planet. How do you see this innovation part and as well the evolution of the ecosystems around them, and as well you as investor and the community of people trading these parts?
Yeah. So when I'll take Avalanche as an example. When I did the seed round of Avalanche, what's striking is that the pitch when you're looking at an early stage investment, especially back then in 2017, the pitch always evolves into what it eventually becomes, right? Almost never is it that the exact idea you start with is the idea that you end with. So I remember the pitch for the Avalanche seed round. I knew the founder, Gunsir, back when he was still a professor at Cornell. And of course, he was a very well-known professor, but only a professor, right? So he didn't have the renown and the repute that he has today in the crypto industry, having built Avalanche. So he ended up coming to Silicon Valley, and I remember I met him at a coffee shop. And he pitched me, and the idea at that time was that they were going to take the Avalanche consensus protocol, which is this new DAG-based consensus that is very different than what Bitcoin and Ethereum were using at that time, and he was going to use it to build a blockchain that was going to basically copy existing blockchains and run them on Avalanche consensus. So he's going to create Avalanche Bitcoin, Avalanche Ethereum, Avalanche Ripple, Avalanche this, Avalanche Zcash, Avalanche blah, blah, blah. And there were going to be all these different versions using Avalanche consensus of existing chains. But that's obviously not what Avalanche is today. But that was the original pitch. And when you're an investor, and I was still very early in my investing career at that time, but when you're an investor, what you learn, having seen enough of these pitches, that every pitch you're ever going to get evolves. It never ends the way it began. And what you're betting on is not the original idea that a founder brings to you. What you're betting on is the trajectory of this person, this team, this energy that is presenting itself in front of you. It's pretty much never the case that a founder, after going through so many revolutions of the technology industry itself, right? Crypto's changed so much since 2017. And if you're not changing alongside it, seeing what Ethereum is doing, what Solana is doing, what NFTs are doing, what gaming is doing, if you're not paying attention to what's around you and adapting and iterating in public, then you're going to fail as a founder. And so that's why I've learned over time, having done seed investing and early stage investing for long enough is that you have to sort of take very lightly what the entrepreneur is telling you that they're going to do, because you have to assume really what you're betting on is a way of finding the right answer. Not that the right answer is already written down on a piece of paper and is presented to you in a deck or a PowerPoint and say, this is the right answer. It's like, no, you don't know the right answer. How would you know? You just sat down and thought about some stuff and said, I think I'll do this. But the real work of entrepreneurship is every single day sitting down in front of the world, trying things and iterating. And that process of iteration is what you're betting on. So that's why the biggest lesson I take away from having seen many of those companies at that time, I remember taking the Solana seed round pitch, the Uniswap pitch, the Optimism pitch, all these guys back in the very, very early days of crypto, when all their ideas changed. All the trajectories changed. Nothing is the same as it was when they were originally pitching it, because nobody knew.
Yeah, that's the magic of innovation. And
That's
as well,
right.
I think there's no closed product. That's what I've been learning as well. A product is always evolving. And if it actually closes, it dies.
Exactly.
So, as leading one of the biggest VCs in the world in this area, Dragonfly. So, first of all, to my audience and for people listening to us, tell us what is Dragonfly. We mentioned already some of the biggest investments you guys did, which I think were very successful, to say less.
Right.
But a bit about what you guys are trying to do from the historical, what you achieved in the last 10 years, and what you right now trying to do. Because we are in a verge of, I think, the blockchain, Web3, and AI, which is a fantastic, I would say, even more radical world,
Right.
but at the same time brings a lot of considerations. So I would like to hear how you guys look at it from, first of all, what is Dragonfly and how you look at it.
So Dragonfly, we're a global crypto VC firm. We've been around since 2018. One of the most active investors across the industry in, with seed, Series A, Series B, and kind of across the life cycle of a company. We manage a few $1 billion in AUM. We have about 45 people around the world today in Asia, US, Western Europe. We're a very, very global footprint, and we've invested into exchanges, brokerages, custodians, layer ones, layer twos, DeFi, everything under the sun. If it's in crypto and blockchain, we've probably touched it at some point. So, we've done a lot of investments that people have heard of, like Avalanche, we led the Series A of Bybit, we led the seed round of Monad, of Athena, Dune Analytics, many of the most iconic companies in crypto we've been a part of at some point. So that's Dragonfly in a nutshell. You asked how we've changed over the last 10 years. I mean, when we first started, we were obviously a fledgling. We were just like a startup. Over time, we've become one of the largest funds in the space and probably one of the preeminent names in crypto. But the thing that we do that is the North Star is really being of service to entrepreneurs, right? One thing that you learn if you're in the VC space is that there's a lot of VCs in crypto all over the world, and they're all competing because crypto is really a global phenomenon. So somebody in the Middle East is competing with somebody in Europe, is competing with somebody in Asia, competing with somebody in the US. In traditional venture, that's really not true. In traditional venture, it's really quite a regional game, where you have the best VCs in a certain region are going to win the deals in that region for the most part. Crypto, everybody really lives online, right? And so in a way, online is really the sphere where we're all competing and trying to find the best founders and the best opportunities. And because it's such a global commons, because there's no Ethereum for Russia, there's no Ethereum for China, there's no Ethereum. There's one Ethereum, there's one Bitcoin, and there's one Solana, there's one Avalanche, and we all participate in it together. So because of that, you have this really global competition to try to be the best investor and to try to get access to the best founders and the best opportunities. And the way that you get that access is by delivering the most value, is by just being very, very stable partners, supporting them, helping them to build their companies and build their protocols, and helping to usher them into the broader, the upper echelons of success. So that's what we try to do. We're very, very patient capital, and we try to stay out of people's way.
Oh, that's very impressive. So coming to the moment we are, so you guys have been mostly backing up most of the protocols that are now the foundations of blockchain and crypto. And as well, the most solid. It's very important because there's been a lot of waves, and I've been in a lot of these waves myself. So how do you see this moment that we have right now, in one end, the leading economy in the world adopting in a major scale, but as well a lot of velocities, and at the same time, like you said, although this is global, there's still an adoption that is going multiple ways. But as well, this is all working as we still have to create, and you mentioned before, the idea of peer-to-peer economy is still very fragile in a lot of ways. And as well, we have Web3 in a lot of strengths and weakness, and AI right now becoming massive.
Yeah.
So how are you looking at these three intercourse? So AI, Web3, and blockchain.
So we can tell that right now we're on a precipice. Is that, as you mentioned, we just had a reversal in the biggest economy in the world in their attitude towards crypto and blockchain. And that, the reality was that the adoption curve of crypto was continuing regardless of what the US was going to do. Because, of course, most of the adoption of crypto, like the bottoms-up adoption, has always been outside the US, not inside the US. And the US is only 4% of the world population. Obviously has a lot of wealth, but doesn't have that many people in absolute terms. So the bigger picture of stablecoins growing and the amount of on-chain addresses going to all-time highs, all that stuff was happening under the Biden administration. So that march of technology, that march of adoption is going to happen one way or another. And that I genuinely believe that even if the election had gone another way, we'd still be in the spot of adoption continuing to grow. Now, the regulatory picture mostly matters not because, nobody's willing to build anything, no one's willing to found anything. The reality was that under the last 4 years, when we had this regulatory onslaught in the US, you still had most companies and founders being under US jurisdiction. That's why the SEC was going after everybody, was because they still chose to build it in the US, right? So people, maybe it's part of the optimism of our industry, is that we just thought, well, surely they'll understand that what we're doing is not wrong, what we're doing is not malicious. We're trying to do it for the heart's in the right place. But one way or another, there's something that's very cavalier about crypto itself, is that we just feel very passionately that this is the future. This is where everything is going. And we want to help bring it there and bring it there in a better way. So that all being said, the story of the regulatory changes in the US primarily matter for institutions, not for consumers. Consumers were using the stuff, one quip that my partner likes to make is that, you look in China, and of course China's banned crypto, right? They banned crypto in 2021. And despite the fact that China's banned crypto, people probably know China is one of the biggest markets for crypto, right? And as the quip goes, you don't ban something that nobody wants to do. So you can see from the Binance CFTC case that China was one of the largest markets. China is absolutely massive. And the same thing has been true in the US. Crypto was de facto illegal in the US. And nevertheless, we've seen a huge amount of adoption of people buying, the Coinbase was supposed to be an illegal business. And yet, huge amounts of the US population, at many points during the Biden administration, Coinbase was the #1 app on the finance section in the App Store. So we see crypto is not going to go away, regardless of whether or not you nominally ban it. But once you create rules for it, you create regulations for it, that allows the institutions to come in and ultimately to institutionalize the industry. Now, the rise of AI has been this kind of twin technology that you see gaining a lot of traction in the US, or globally, really, obviously. And I do think that AI is going to be one of the most transformative technologies, not of this decade, but of this century. Right? This is absolutely going to change the world, and everybody knows it. So there's two directions of causality that you might be interested in, which is, one, what is crypto going to do to AI? And the second question is, what is AI going to do to crypto? And I think those are both very important questions. For the side of crypto affecting AI, I think there are a few things that people have spoken about that I think is probably correct, but it's still very early. The first is that once you have working AI agents, right? AI agents meaning fully autonomous AI actors that can take actions in the world, that are going to be working on your behalf or on someone's behalf. These AI agents are very likely to use crypto. Now, why is that true? It's true because, of course, if you want an AI agent to do something for you, probably, the most important things that we do are economic in nature. Right? You want this to be an economic agent if you want it to really do stuff that's useful and not just be, some kind of executive assistant, right? And okay, for an AI agent to be an economic actor, it has to use money. So how's it going to use money? Is it going to use a bank account? Well, if you get an AI agent try to open a bank account at a bank, how is an AI agent going to pass KYC? How's it going to do AML? Where is it going to pay taxes? Right? What jurisdiction does it belong to? What country does it belong to? What state does it belong to? We don't have any answers to these questions. Like our system of law is designed for humans, companies, and governments to own money. We don't have any concept of a non-human agent owning money. We just don't, we're completely unprepared for it. But this stuff is going to happen very, very soon if it's not happening already, right? Crypto was designed for machines. In a way, that's part of the reason why it's so difficult to use, is because it wasn't designed for humans, it was designed for machines. All you have to do is custody a private key. If you can custody a private key, you can use money, you can pay anybody. You can pay another agent, you can pay a human. And this function of money, of crypto being this kind of digitally native money, is going to be pivotal to why AI agents, before they wait around for the laws to adapt to, okay, here's how we can create some kind of legal system for AIs to use money, they're going to say, look, I'm not going to wait for you. I'm just going to go start using USDC on chain. Boom. Then I'm going to use that to pay my counterparties, to pay humans, to pay whatever. So that, I think, is going to be the first stop. The other side of the question of, okay, how is AI going to affect crypto? Well, I think the first and most obvious answer is that AI is going to massively lower the costs of software, right? We already start to see it, is that, you look at things like, DeepSeek or Gemini 2.5, amazing at writing code, right? Claude from Anthropic. As they get better and better, and right now they're okay. You couldn't build an entire company worth of software using one of these AI agents. But we're getting to larger and larger chunks of software being automatable using these AI agents. Once they get to scale, these AI agents are going to make the cost of software engineering plummet. It's going to become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to be able to build software products. And what is the primary input into the crypto industry? The answer is software. When people go raise all this money, why are they raising all this money? The answer is to write software, to go pay software engineers. If that goes away and suddenly becomes really, really cheap to be able to hire and pay AI-based software engineers, then what that means is the primary input to our industry just deflated like crazy. And now the idea of somebody building, a dApp on the weekends and evenings is going to be a joke. It's going to be trivial to do. In the same way, once upon a time, in the early days of the internet, people would raise money. They would go raise, $1 million to go build a website. And when I say build a website, it means that it costs a bunch of money to build a website, like a static website. Yes. And if you wanted to host your website, you had to go and buy a server. And a server costs a bunch of money, right? It was not cheap to buy a server. And now, today, to host a website is literally free, right? You go to, GitHub Pages, or you go to, Squarespace, you pay $12 or whatever. It's basically so cheap, it's too cheap to meter. Use Netlify or something else, it's literally free. And we went from that world where, a VC in those days might have thought, well, why would you ever raise money? What would you spend the money on? Because now, someday in the future, websites are going to be free. We're going to get to that same place with software, where software becomes so cheap and so easy to build that it's basically free. And the question is, okay, what else are you going to be spending your money on? Or why do you even need to raise money? If all you want to do is go test out this dApp, this smart contract, this website, just go tell an AI agent it's going to write it up overnight and it's going to cost $1,000. You can go afford that yourself just in the weekends and evenings, and that is going to be transformative in the amount of products and software that gets created for this industry. That is going to result in this Cambrian explosion of applications and use cases that we can now start, looking at Avalanche, for example. A lot of their time, I talk with the BD team, a lot of their time is just cultivating the software engineers and the founders who are in the space. There's going to be 100 times more founders, 100 times more people creating products, creating software experiences, because of how cheap and how easy it's going to be. And that's going to be a huge accelerant to what's happening in the on-chain economy. So that's my view. I think both these angles are very important and worth paying attention to.
No, it's super important. So one angle that I want to bring to that, so you mentioned Avalanche, so the DeFi is right now touching everything of the world economy. Mm-hmm. But one of the challenges, like you mentioned before, is the adoption, but as well the UI UX of the adoption. Because like you said, regulators manage all these different things. There's not even a discussion. And like you said, is becoming increasing, well, that's the idea of blockchain, is to have security of ID, of identity of data, payments, and so forth. So with the Avalanche, I think probably the biggest DeFi community around and all the ecosystem around that. So how do you see the DeFi, especially in our economical models? Because I think one of the challenges we found so far in the adoption, at least I would say mass adoption, without prejudice, let's put all the prejudice outside, is that kind of, in one end, the UI UX and the experience, and second, bringing DeFi to communities that actually can effectively work without the risks that we know. So on this part of the DeFi, and bear in mind we've been actually investing in some of these protocols, what is the moment? And you said that we are in a precipice in a lot of ways with what is happening in the world economy as well. How do you see this? Because DeFi has so much opportunities to build economies, and especially, for instance, you look at emerging markets, like you said, the US is 4%, but the world economy is massive. And for instance, Africa, it's most of the age group of Africa is 18 years old. Asia is as well around 20s. So, and all of them are completely, especially for Southeast Asia, they're all into crypto. And Africa completely.
That's right.
I remember I helped create a bank in 2014, and my research was that they were using Bitcoin because it was safer than actually anything else. And this was 2014. We are in 2025.
Right.
So I want to hear your thoughts on this.
No, I think you're absolutely right. This is technology that's going to be adopted in a non-uniform way. Some countries are going to start sooner than others, and probably the number one predictor is going to be their youth. You can see very clearly, even in the U.S., the disconnect between the old and the young with respect to their attitudes and their intuitions about crypto. I think that story that you just described is absolutely correct. The place where crypto is most valuable is the place where the financial infrastructure is the worst, right? In a way, the way I like to describe DeFi is sort of a financial system in a box. Now, it's not the best financial system in the world, right? If you are in the US and you're wealthy and you have access to great merchant banks that are going to take care of you and make your life very easy and comfortable, and you have access to all the financial products you could possibly want, then trying to do your financial activity in DeFi might just be unattractive. It's like, okay, well, why? What do I get out of it? I already have access to private credit. I already have access to the stock market, to this, to that. I can buy my crypto on Charles Schwab or whatever. So why do I need this? And the answer for many people is they don't need it. It's in places where the currency is not being well managed, where the banks are, the banks themselves are not good stewards of the economy. It's in places where people don't have a lot of financial access, or they don't have a lot of financial freedom, or where capital controls are very restrictive, or just where you realize that the society itself is dysfunctional. In these places, what you get is DeFi at its current level is basically a floor. It's a floor under which, if your local financial system is not better than DeFi, then basically it's like, well, screw you. I'm just going to use DeFi then. And DeFi will be my financial system. It creates this floor of competition. Normally, in a world without DeFi, a central bank or a financial system that is failing to really provide a baseline of service and quality basically is a monopoly. It has no competition. Because if you live in Nigeria or in Argentina or in Venezuela, you just have one option, which is the banks, the government, the currency. And you really have no way to exit without going onto the black market. Crypto gives everybody the ability to exit using just a mobile phone and an internet connection. As long as you have that anywhere in the world, you can exit to crypto. And this, now obviously this is destabilizing to some degree, because it means that, look, if you're Venezuela and your currency is inflating and you're being, again, a very poor steward of your economy, then that means that people are going to say, screw you. I don't want to use the Bolivar. I don't want to have my currency inflating 100% a year. Like, that's insane. And nobody deserves to go through that kind of experience. And so that is the way that this technology is originally going to get adopted. And what you will see is that, if you're the US, that's where you see actually the sort of ground, grassroots adoption of crypto is actually the lowest, right? Where people aren't living their lives in DeFi because they already have great financial access, right? Why would you use stablecoins when you already have dollars? You already have Venmo, you already have PayPal. And that's actually correct. Increasingly, the demand for stablecoins is outside the US, where people really want dollars. It's in places like Venezuela, places like Turkey, places like Iran, places like Indonesia, where people really want dollars. And that's why stablecoins are so attractive on a relative basis. And so what you'll see is that DeFi provides this baseline. And if you're the US, maybe you're Western Europe, you're already up here. right? And so this baseline is not attractive enough for people to move en masse. But if you're in Argentina or you're in Venezuela, you're down here, and DeFi is already better than what you got, right? And so you're great. Let's use DeFi. This is excellent. But as DeFi gets better and better, more and more of these countries are going to meet this high watermark, and they're going to say, "Huh, DeFi is now better than what my country's offering. I'm just going to switch over to DeFi." And that provides not just an alternative for people who are there, but it also provides much needed competition. And my claim is that it's going to make financial regulators, banks, and central banks, it's going to make them become more competitive. It's going to make them become better stewards of their own economies. And so at the end of the day, whether or not you're pro-crypto or anti-crypto, you should be pro the competitive forces that it pushes onto the existing financial rails.
Yeah, and this touches one area that is very dear to me, that is financial inclusion, because of financial literacy.
Yeah.
Because the challenge that we have is, I think when you don't understand, you get confused. And I'll be just my last two questions. I know that you need to go. So you have a background in philosophy, ethics, and crypto, but as well, you've been teaching as well cryptocurrencies. And you did it a couple of times, partly as well in your part. And then as well, you wrote a book, How to Be a Pocket Player, The Philosophy of Poker. So I want to touch these things because I think one of the challenges we have, especially with young people, is the systems of education are in a lot of ways broken. And I'm a teacher in university, so I know how complex it is because there's no common sense on this. But is how we can get all these people that we're talking about, because there's emerging markets, there's the solid, Western world, which as well is becoming an emerging market in a lot of ways, at least in a lot of, if you're not in an elite way. So how do you see this from a perspective of education and adoption of innovation around technology and crypto? Because, of course, it's your area of expertise.
Yeah. Look, I think this is one of those spaces where when you're first coming into the crypto space, it's very opaque. It's very difficult to understand all these new concepts, all these new terms, all these new things that, when I first came into the space, there was literally no classes being taught. I think it was only Stanford that had a Bitcoin course at that time, and no other universities were teaching anything about crypto. So when I first came into the space, almost everybody who was around at that time, you had to teach yourself. You had to just go and find the blog posts and the forum posts and the this and that and kind of piece it together to understand what was really going on. And thankfully, we're now in a much better place where many universities teach blockchain and crypto. But the reality is that they're almost always one step behind, right? This is an industry that moves and evolves very rapidly. And in order to really understand what's happening at the vanguard, you have to be in it. You have to be, much like yourself, kind of straddling the worlds of both academia as well as industry and kind of seeing what's happening in real time. And so this is one of these places where the best way to learn it is not in a university. The best way to learn it and the best way to really stay at the vanguard is to just immerse yourself in it. It's like really follow what's going on. The place where every single day things are being explored at the very frontier is in podcasts and in things like what you're doing on YouTube and the people talking to people who are actually building the thing that we're all focused on. It's the same thing with AI. You go take a class on AI and you're going to be learning about what was going on in the 80s, And the reality is that the people who really understand the absolute cutting edge of how, GPT-4 and, Claude and Anthropic and all these companies are building what they're building, these people are mostly working in industry. They're not working in academia. And so in order to understand that, go listen to the podcast, go talk to the people, go find yourself in those spaces. And so more and more, the faster the world is moving, the less I think you can really rely on these kind of old world methods of education. Is that more and more of the really important stuff that's worth learning is in places that are not going to easily come to you. You have to go to it. Go find the fountain and drink directly at the source.
100%. Last one. You, of course, are a leading personality in the world in these areas. So what are the trends in blockchain and crypto that excite you the most?
So I'm very interested in what's going on at the intersection of crypto and AI. I spend a lot of my time seeing what are people doing that's going to lead to the union of these two very important trends in the world. And a lot of the very smartest people I see increasingly are going into the intersection of crypto and AI. Spend a lot of my time on stablecoins. Obviously, there's a stablecoin bill that's currently in Congress, and it looks like it's about to hit the Senate floor. That's going to be a big story in the acceleration of stablecoins going around the world. And then, of course, the continued evolution of the infrastructure in crypto. So whether it's at the networking layer, the consensus layer, the execution layer, more and more crypto is going to go another 10x and another 10x after that. If it's going to become, right now we probably have in the order of about 10, 20 million people that are directly on chain on any given day. That's obviously many, many more people using centralized exchanges, but the real on-chain activity is somewhere in that order of magnitude. In order to get to 100 million or 1 billion people on chain, there's a lot of scalability improvements that need to happen, and that's one of the things that I spend a lot of my time on. So I think it's still a vibrant space, so a lot of hard problems that need to get solved, but thankfully we have a lot of really brilliant people here and around the world who are trying to solve them.
Well, fantastic, Anna. I think you will do it. Thank you so much, Haseeb.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.